Waylon Jennings was one of country music's biggest stars, but his journey was never a simple one. His relationship with the Grand Ole Opry started with respect and opportunity, but over time, tensions grew between Jennings and one of country music's most famous institutions. What happened next became one of the most talked about moments of his career. Join us as we uncover why Waylon Jennings walked away from the Grand Ole Opry and the story behind the decision that defined his legacy. A Texas boy, Waylon Jennings was born on June 15, 1937, in the small town of Littlefield, Texas. Long before he became one of country music's biggest stars, he was simply a boy growing up in a place where hard work and determination were part of everyday life. Littlefield was a farming community on the South Plains of Texas, and life there was not always easy. The United States was still feeling the effects of the Great Depression, and many families had to work hard just to make ends meet. Jennings' family was no different. They lived a modest life, and from an early age, he understood the value of earning what you had. His parents encouraged him, but music quickly became the thing that excited him more than anything else. While many children spent their free time playing games, Jennings was fascinated by the sounds coming from country radio stations. Every chance he got, he listened carefully to the singers who filled the airwaves. He didn't just enjoy the songs, he wanted to understand how they were written and performed. It became clear that music was more than a hobby for him. When Jennings was still a young boy, he received his first guitar. Learning to play did not come from expensive lessons or formal training. Instead, he spent countless hours practicing on his own, listening to records and trying to copy what he heard. He improved steadily because he genuinely loved playing. Every new chord and every new song encouraged him to keep going. Before long, he was confident enough to perform for family members and local audiences. Several country artists left a lasting impression on the young Jennings. Hank Williams became one of his biggest inspirations because of his honest songwriting and emotional performances. Ernest Tubb showed him the power of traditional country music, while Lefty Frizzle's smooth singing style also caught his attention. He was equally drawn to Western swing, a lively style that blended country music with jazz and dance rhythms. Artists like Bob Wills introduced him to a broader sound that expanded his musical interests. These influences helped shape the style that Jennings would later make famous, although he would eventually add his own unique approach. But before his career could truly take off, one meeting would change his life forever. Buddy Holly. Waylon Jennings' life changed dramatically after he began working as a radio disc jockey in Lubbock, Texas. The job allowed him to spend every day around country music, but it also introduced him to people who were making names for themselves in rock and roll. One of those rising stars was Buddy Holly, another young musician from the Lubbock area who was quickly becoming one of America's biggest performers. Jennings and Holly connected almost immediately. They both shared a love of music, respected each other's talent, and enjoyed talking about songs, performances, and life on the road. Although Holly had already achieved national success with hits like Peggy Sue and That'll Be the Day, he never treated Jennings like an outsider. Instead, he encouraged the young musician and recognized his potential. Their friendship soon turned into a professional opportunity. In late 1958, Holly invited Jennings to join his touring band as the bass player. It was a major break for someone who had spent years performing in small venues and working at local radio stations. Suddenly, Jennings found himself traveling across the country, playing before large crowds, and learning firsthand what life as a professional musician was really like. The tour they joined became known as the Winter Dance Party. Beginning in January 1959, it featured Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, J.P. Richardson, better known as the Big Bopper, and several other performers. The schedule was demanding from the very beginning. The musicians traveled long distances, almost every day, often performing in one city before immediately leaving for another. The buses were old, uncomfortable, and frequently broke down. Heating systems often failed during one of the coldest winters in years, leaving the musicians traveling through freezing temperatures with very little rest between shows. As the tour continued, the difficult conditions began affecting everyone. Some performers became sick after spending hours on buses without proper heating. The constant travel left little time to recover before the next performance. Buddy Holly eventually decided to charter a small aeroplane after one of the concerts in Clear Lake, Iowa. Flying would allow several members of the group to reach the next venue more quickly, get some sleep, and avoid another miserable overnight bus ride. Originally, Jennings was supposed to be one of the passengers on that flight. However, J.P. Richardson had come down with the flu and was feeling extremely ill. Seeing how sick his friend was, Jennings offered him his seat on the plane without hesitation. It was a simple act of kindness that would later become one of the most talked about moments in country music history. There was one more seat available on the aircraft, and guitarist Tommy Allsup and the young singer Ritchie Valens reportedly settled it with a coin toss. Valens won the toss, earning his place on the flight. None of the musicians had any reason to believe the decision would become so significant. Before leaving for the airport, Buddy Holly joked with Jennings about not flying with him. Holly smiled and said, "I hope your old bus freezes up." Jennings laughed and answered with a joke of his own, "I hope your plane crashes." Neither man meant anything by the exchange. It was simply friendly teasing between two close friends. They said goodbye, expecting to see each other again at the next stop on the tour. Instead, only a few hours later, tragedy struck. In the early hours of 3 February 1959, shortly after taking off from Mason City, Iowa, the small plane crashed into a field. Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, J.P. Richardson, and pilot Roger Peterson were all killed. The accident shocked the music world and quickly became one of the most heartbreaking events in entertainment history. His second chance eventually took him to Nashville, where a different kind of battle was waiting for him. Nashville success. After rebuilding his career in Arizona, Waylon Jennings eventually set his sights on Nashville, Tennessee. By the early 1960s, Nashville had become the center of the country music business. Every ambitious country singer wanted to record there because the biggest record labels, producers, publishers, and radio connections were all based in the city. Jennings believed that if he wanted to reach a national audience, Nashville was where he needed to be. His persistence paid off when he signed with RCA Records, one of the biggest recording companies in America. It was an important milestone. RCA had already helped launch the careers of some of country music's biggest names, and signing with the label gave Jennings a real opportunity to become a star. He finally had the backing of a major company, access to professional recording studios, and the chance to release music across the country. Success did not come overnight, but Jennings steadily built a loyal audience. As more of his songs reached country radio, listeners began to notice his rich voice and confident style. He stood out because he sounded different from many of the polished singers dominating Nashville at the time. His music felt direct, honest, and full of personality. Several songs helped establish him as one of country music's rising stars. Only Daddy That'll Walk the Line became one of his biggest early hits and climbed the country charts in 1968. The song introduced many listeners to Jennings and showed that he could deliver both commercial success and a strong performance. Another popular recording, his version of Brown-Eyed Handsome Man, also earned attention and proved he was comfortable mixing traditional country with rock and roll influences. With each successful release, his reputation continued to grow. Around the same period, Jennings found happiness in his personal life as well. In 1969, he married fellow country singer Jessie Coulter. Their relationship became one of the best-known partnerships in country music. Coulter understood the pressures of the music business because she was living through them herself. The two supported each other's careers while building a family together. Through many difficult moments in the years ahead, she remained one of Jennings' strongest supporters. While Jennings's career was moving in the right direction, he was becoming increasingly unhappy with the way Nashville operated behind the scenes. During the 1960s, the city's music industry followed a very structured system. Record labels and producers held most of the power, while artists were expected to follow instructions rather than make creative decisions themselves. In many cases, singers did not choose the songs they recorded. Producers often selected material they believed would become successful on country radio. Recording sessions were also organized in advance, with record companies hiring the same group of experienced session musicians to play on nearly every album. These musicians were highly talented, but artists had little say in who joined them in the studio. Even the sound of each record was often shaped by producers instead of the performers themselves. Decisions about arrangements, instruments, and final recordings were usually made by executives who believed they knew what audiences wanted. Artists were expected to trust the process and avoid questioning the system. There were also clear expectations about appearance and public image. Country stars were encouraged to dress neatly, maintain a clean-cut look, and behave in ways that matched Nashville's carefully managed reputation. For many performers, these rules were simply part of the job. The next battle would take place at country music's most respected stage, the Grand Ole Opry. The Grand Ole Opry. By the time Waylon Jennings was becoming one of country music's rising stars, there was one stage that every artist wanted to stand on: the Grand Ole Opry. For decades, the Opry had been considered the heart of country music. Since its beginnings in the 1920s, it had introduced audiences to many of the genre's biggest names and helped turn unknown singers into national stars. Performing there was more than just another concert. It was seen as proof that an artist had earned a place among country music's best. For many singers, receiving an invitation to perform at the Grand Ole Opry was a lifelong dream. Fans listened to its radio broadcasts across the United States, and appearing on the famous stage brought attention that few other venues could match. Becoming a regular performer often meant greater respect within the industry, more concert bookings, and stronger record sales. In many ways, the Opry represented the highest level of success in traditional country music. Waylon Jennings understood exactly what the Grand Ole Opry meant. Like countless young musicians before him, he had grown up listening to country legends who performed there. After years of working in radio stations, small clubs, and dance halls, reaching the Opry felt like another important step in the career he had worked so hard to build. Jennings eventually began making appearances on the Grand Ole Opry stage. His growing popularity and successful recordings made him a welcome addition to the program, and he soon became part of its regular rotation of performers. Sharing the stage with some of the biggest names in country music was an achievement that confirmed how far he had come since his early days in Texas and Arizona. At first, everything seemed to be moving in the right direction. The Opry gave Jennings valuable exposure, while his energetic performances attracted audiences who appreciated his distinctive sound. On the surface, the relationship appeared successful. Behind the scenes, however, things were much more complicated. Appearance mattered. During the 1960s, the Grand Ole Opry presented a polished and conservative image to its audience. Men typically wore clean, well-tailored suits or Western outfits, while performers were expected to look neat and presentable. Long hair, rugged clothing, or styles that challenged traditional country music were often viewed with suspicion. The Opry wanted its artists to represent a certain image, one that reflected stability, professionalism, and respect for long-standing traditions. For many performers, these expectations were simply part of being associated with the Grand Ole Opry. They accepted the rules because the honor of performing there outweighed any personal frustrations. Waylon Jennings was different. By this point in his career, he had already grown tired of being told how to make music by record executives. Now he found himself dealing with another institution that expected artists to fit into an established system. The more time he spent around the Opry, the more uncomfortable he became with its rigid culture. Jennings respected country music and admired many of the artists who performed there, but he did not believe that creativity should be controlled by strict traditions. He preferred to perform in a way that felt natural rather than carefully following unwritten rules about image, behavior, and presentation. He wanted to be judged by his music, not by whether he perfectly matched Nashville's idea of what a country singer should look like. His independent personality often placed him at odds with people responsible for running the Opry. While management valued order and consistency, Jennings valued freedom and authenticity. Neither side was willing to completely change its approach, and small disagreements gradually became more noticeable. As Jennings' confidence grew, he became less willing to hide his opinions. He questioned rules that other performers accepted without complaint and showed little interest in changing his personality simply to fit into the Opry's culture. At the same time, Opry officials expected every artist to respect the institution's traditions, regardless of personal feelings. It was becoming clear that these two ways of thinking were on a collision course. The disagreements had not yet exploded into a major public dispute, but the signs were becoming impossible to ignore. The relationship that had once looked so promising was growing more strained with every appearance. It wouldn't be long before one performance turned that growing tension into a confrontation that neither side would forget. The night Waylon walked off. By the early 1970s, the differences between Waylon Jennings and the Grand Ole Opry had become impossible to ignore. What had started as small disagreements over rules and expectations had slowly grown into a much deeper conflict. Jennings wanted to perform on his own terms, while the Opry expected every artist to follow the same traditions that had guided the program for decades. Eventually, those two views collided during one performance that would become one of the most talked-about moments of his career. Like every Grand Ole Opry broadcast, the evening's program followed a carefully planned schedule. The Opry featured several performers during each show, and every act was given a specific amount of time on stage. Keeping to that timetable was considered essential. If one performer went over time, it affected the musicians waiting backstage, the radio broadcast, and the rest of the night's running order. Opry management took these schedules very seriously, and performers were expected to respect them without question. Waylon Jennings, however, had never been comfortable with rigid rules. By this point, he had already spent years arguing with record producers about creative control, and he believed that music should not be reduced to a strict timetable. He wanted the freedom to connect with the audience, finish songs naturally, and decide for himself how his performance should unfold. On the night that everything came to a head, Jennings reportedly found himself approaching the end of his allotted time. As was standard practice, the stage manager signaled that his slot was over and that it was time to wrap up his performance so the next act could begin. Most performers would have acknowledged the signal, finished quickly, and left the stage. Jennings did not. Instead, he chose to continue. Whether he felt the audience deserved one more song or simply disliked being told when to stop, he refused to end the performance the moment management expected him to. To Jennings, cutting a performance short because someone was pointing at a clock went against everything he believed about live music. The decision immediately created tension behind the scenes. Opry staff were responsible for keeping the show on schedule, and Jennings's refusal placed them in a difficult position. The longer he stayed on stage, the more pressure built backstage. Jennings was known for speaking his mind, especially when he believed someone was trying to control him. Witnesses and later reports describe him arguing angrily with members of Opry management after being challenged about exceeding his time. Several accounts also state that he used strong profanity during the confrontation, making it clear that he had no intention of apologizing for what had happened. For Opry officials, Jennings' behavior crossed a line. The Grand Ole Opry had always expected performers to show respect for its management and traditions, even during disagreements. Public arguments and open defiance were not part of the culture the organization wanted to maintain. For Jennings, the situation represented something much bigger than a few extra minutes on stage. He believed artists should not be treated as though every movement had to be controlled. In his mind, the issue was not simply about a timetable. It reflected the same struggle he had already experienced with record labels and producers who wanted to decide how musicians should perform, what songs they should sing, and how they should present themselves. Rather than accepting the criticism or agreeing to follow the rules in the future, Jennings made a decision that surprised many people in Nashville. He walked away. Accounts differ on whether he left before fully completing everything the program expected of him, or whether he simply finished the confrontation by leaving the building. But there is broad agreement that he chose not to continue his relationship with the Grand Ole Opry after the incident. Instead of trying to repair the disagreement immediately, he decided he had had enough. In the days and weeks that followed, questions began circulating throughout the country music industry. Some people wondered whether Jennings had officially quit the Grand Ole Opry. Others believed he had never formally resigned at all and had simply refused to return after the confrontation. Even today, that distinction remains somewhat unclear. There was no dramatic public resignation announcement. Instead, his absence became permanent because neither side appeared interested in rebuilding the relationship. A growing number of fans admired Jennings precisely because he refused to compromise. They believed he was standing up for artistic freedom and refusing to let another powerful institution tell him how to perform. To these supporters, walking away from the Opry was not an act of disrespect, but an act of independence. Country music insiders were equally divided. Some executives and longtime industry figures considered Jennings difficult to work with because he challenged established practices. Others quietly agreed with many of his complaints, even if they would never have confronted the Grand Ole Opry so openly themselves. Behind closed doors, many musicians had their own frustrations with Nashville's traditional system, and Jennings was one of the few willing to express them publicly. Years later, Jennings looked back on the incident with the benefit of time. In interviews and in his autobiography, he acknowledged that his temper sometimes got the better of him. He never pretended that he had always handled disagreements perfectly. At the same time, he remained firm in his belief that artists deserved greater control over their own careers. Looking back, he did not view the conflict as an isolated argument over a schedule. He saw it as part of a much larger fight against a system that, in his opinion, placed too many limits on musicians. The Grand Ole Opry episode became one of the clearest examples of Jennings choosing his principles over acceptance by one of country music's most famous institutions. Walking away was not an easy decision, but once he made it, he never looked back. The bigger story, though, wasn't why he left that night. It was why he never felt the need to return. The real reason. When people look back at Waylon Jennings' split with the Grand Ole Opry, it is easy to focus on the argument that took place backstage. It was dramatic, it made headlines, and it became one of the most talked about stories of his career. But the truth is that one heated confrontation was not the real reason he never returned. The disagreement was simply the final chapter in a conflict that had been building for years. Jennings did not stay away because of one bad night. He stayed away because his beliefs about music no longer matched the way the Opry and much of the Nashville music industry operated. At the center of everything was one idea that Jennings never gave up. Artists should control their own music. Throughout his career, he believed that the person standing on stage or in the recording studio should make the important creative decisions. He wanted to choose the songs he recorded, decide how they sounded, select the musicians who played alongside him, and perform in a way that felt natural. He did not believe these decisions should belong to record executives, producers, or institutions that were removed from the creative process. Jennings respected the talent of the producers and musicians involved, but he disliked the lack of freedom. He believed the business had become too controlled by rules, meetings, and company decisions. Too many people who were not writing or performing the music had the power to shape it. To him, the industry had become weighed down by bureaucracy, where paperwork and management sometimes seemed more important than creativity. He also disliked the pressure to fit a certain image. Nashville often expected country stars to dress neatly, behave conservatively, and present a polished appearance. Jennings had little interest in meeting those expectations if they did not reflect who he really was. He wanted fans to know him as an honest musician, not as someone carefully shaped by marketing decisions. These beliefs became the foundation of what would soon be known as the outlaw country movement. Alongside artists such as Willie Nelson, Tom Paul Glaser, and others, Jennings helped create a different direction for country music. The movement was not about encouraging lawbreaking, despite its name. Instead, it represented musicians who wanted independence from Nashville's traditional way of doing business. They wanted creative control over their albums and careers, rather than simply following instructions from record companies. The outlaw artists also looked different from many of the performers who dominated country television and the Grand Ole Opry stage. Longer hair replaced carefully trimmed styles. Leather jackets often replaced formal Western suits. Their music focused on honest storytelling and personal experiences rather than trying to fit a carefully designed commercial formula. Most importantly, they insisted on recording music that reflected their own ideas. Instead of allowing producers to make every decision, artists like Jennings fought to oversee their albums from beginning to end. This was a major shift in country music, and it changed the relationship between performers and record labels. As Jennings gained more creative freedom, his career reached new heights. In 1973, he released Honky Tonk Heroes, an album widely regarded as one of the defining records of the outlaw movement. Much of its material was written by Billy Joe Shaver, and Jennings was finally able to present music that sounded the way he believed it should. The album did not just earn praise from critics, it also showed that audiences were ready for something different. More success followed. Dreaming My Dreams, released in 1975, became one of the biggest albums of his career. It featured hit songs that strengthened his position as one of country music's leading artists. Soon after came Are You Ready for the Country, another successful release that confirmed his popularity was continuing to grow. These albums proved something important. Jennings no longer needed the Grand Ole Opry to reach listeners. For many years, appearing on the Opry had been considered almost essential for country music success. Jennings demonstrated that this was no longer true. Fans bought his records, attended his concerts, and supported his music because they believed in him, not because he was connected to one particular institution. His commercial success gave him something many artists before him had never enjoyed: independence. Instead of returning to an organization whose rules he disagreed with, he continued building a career on his own terms. Every successful album reinforced the decision he had made after leaving the Opry. Looking back, it becomes clear that Jennings's absence was never about holding a personal grudge against the Grand Ole Opry. It was about choosing a different path. He believed country music could grow without losing its honesty, and he was willing to leave behind old traditions if they stood in the way of that goal. By refusing to return, he stayed true to the principles that had guided him throughout his career, and those principles helped reshape country music for generations that followed. Years later, both Waylon Jennings and the Grand Ole Opry had changed, but their story still wasn't completely over. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join us as we uncover more incredible stories from the lives of music legends.